One of the more interesting ways of teaching that you can easily implement is called the flipped classroom or flipped learning. While I am a CELTA or TEFL teacher trainer, this method applies to all kinds of teaching. So whether you're a high school teacher or a university professor, flipped learning is something that you can effectively implement in your teaching. Recently, I had the honor of being invited by a friend and colleague, Shannon, to speak at a conference that she hosted as part of her organization, TEFL Horizons. And at that conference, I spoke about flipped learning. Shannon has very kindly provided me, and by implication you, with a recording of my talk at the conference. And that's what I'm going to get into in this video. Before we get into the content of the video, if you haven't come across Shannon's content, either her website or her YouTube channel or her podcast, I'd strongly recommend that you head on over to TEFL Horizons and check her out there. She has a wealth of golden material that will help teachers at all stages of their career. And before we jump into the talk from the conference at TEFL Horizons, please do consider jumping over to my website if you are interested at all in having a free 30-minute consultation with me. And of course, if you find this content in any way helpful, I'd be ever so grateful if you leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and consider maybe even sharing this content with anybody you think might find it of benefit. Okay, that's enough for me for now. Let's jump into the conference.
Very happy to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us for the second year. And if we're ready, I'll go ahead and give you a quick introduction and then I'll let you take it away.
Right on. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So we have Fergus Fadden with us. Thank you for coming back again for year 2 of the TEFL Horizons Virtual Conference. And Fergus is going to be sharing, as you can see on the screen, but he'll be sharing a little bit about what is often called the flipped learning method, or sometimes the flipped classroom method of teaching. And I think it's really cool to talk about this when we talk about online teaching, because there are a lot of ways that you can use it to kind of combine asynchronous things with live things and a whole other sort of host of opportunities that it opens up in terms of reframing how you're thinking about presenting materials and structuring lessons and the learning process. So I'm going to let Fergus obviously tell you a lot more about that. And go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shannon. Here's just an overview of what we'll cover in my session today. So I'm going to start off by just giving you a little bit of background about myself, who I am, what's my background in English language teaching. I'm going to show you where you can find my online presence and find a little bit more about me, if hopefully you're interested after today's session. I won't spend too long on that. And then we'll dive into the objectives of today, which is really around this idea Shannon has mentioned, the flipped learning, or as she correctly says, which is often referred to as the flipped classroom. We look at the technology that's needed for that. And then I'm going to spend a big chunk of today's session on an example lesson. This is a lesson that I helped a client of mine, a trainee teacher, prepare a little while ago for a teacher training course that they were doing. And I just thought that it was a really good example of something that could lend itself well to this idea of the flipped classroom. But as I said, if that terminology is new for you, flipped classroom or flipped learning, don't worry, of course I will define that. So hopefully by seeing an example like this, it will make more sense to you. And then towards the end, we're going to look at, I was thinking about having a breakout room, but we can absolutely do it in a chat just the same. Just what are some of the applications? What are some of the benefits of this approach? Yeah, so as you would have seen from the description, sorry, one more thing I just thought about. As we go along today, if you have any questions, I would just encourage you just to take note of them. If you want, take a screenshot of what's on the screen at the time to help jog your memory, but just take a note, because I have sectioned off some time towards the end for a more kind of like open question and answer section. So yeah, just please take a note of your questions as we go along. Okay, so yeah, today's session I've titled it Flipped Learning, or the Flipped Learning Method of Teaching Technology as a Friend, not as a foe. But the world that we live in today, of course, technology is very much in our part of our daily lives, but still sometimes it can feel like things might not go to plan. Case in point today, I was thinking about, okay, I'll do some breakout rooms. In times gone by, that might have made me feel a lot more pressure, and might have felt that things weren't going to go so well. But as you begin to use technology more and more in your teaching, you'll always have a plan B or a second way of doing things. And yeah, technology will become more of your friend and less of a foe. Okay, so as I said, a little bit about me. As you can probably hear from my accent, I'm from Ireland originally. Way back when I took a degree in law, but didn't really quite want to get into legal practice right away. So I took what was called a diploma in English language teaching to adults at the time, which is called Delta. Some of you may have heard of that. It's kind of the next step after another pretty well-known ELT teacher training course called a CELTA. So yeah, that opened up the door for me to become a teacher trainer. I found out a really nice coincidence about your host, Shannon, that she and I both are trainers on a pretty niche Irish teacher training course called the CALT or the CELT, depending which way you look at that. But both of us are also teacher trainers for the much more internationally well-known course, which is called the Cambridge ESOL CELTA. I've lived and taught in France, Spain, Brazil, South Africa, the United States, of course, my home country of Ireland, but I'm currently coming to you from Nova Scotia in Canada. And these days, I spend a lot of my time doing this. I'm an instructional designer, so I make e-learning materials. So those kind of like self-guided modules where you kind of click through it yourself. I do a lot of media work, particularly video editing and audio design, and all of that ties in fact that I am indeed a YouTuber. So maybe some of you may have come across my channel before. It's called Integrated Skills. You can find me just by typing in my name, Fergus Fadden, and you can find a YouTube channel. I'll share a link to that at the end of today's session. No pressure to click on it, but if you think something there might be useful to you, by all means. It's focused particularly on teacher training, but also for teachers who are non-native speakers of English who wish to take an exam such as the IELTS or the Cambridge Advanced or the Cambridge Proficiency. Greetings from Algeria, Keira, welcome. I also have a website as well. Again, I'll be sharing a link to that. It's just integratedskillsacademy.com, where I offer anybody who's taken any kind of teacher training a free 30-minute consultation one-on-one with me. And you can do that really easily just by clicking on the book an appointment button. And I'm on all the usual social media. I'm going to jump on through that because I don't want to spend too much time on the old self-promotion. Let's get into the meat of today's session. And so, as I mentioned, we're going to first of all start by defining our terms. What indeed is flipped learning? And then we're going to move on to what is a screencast, or also referred to as a screen capture. You can just see those terms as broadly synonymous, and we'll talk about what is that and how to do it. We'll talk a little bit about this idea of evergreen materials, concept that really revolves around making your life as a teacher easier. It's kind of like put in the initial effort and then it's kind of done forever. And we look at that as a benefit to flipped learning. We'll talk a little bit, as I mentioned, around the required technology. And as I said, we'll finish off the session today with Q&A. So just one more little quick reminder, please do note down any questions as we go along, and I'll open up the forum towards the end for those questions. Okay, so what is flipped learning? I'm going to hand it over to you. You can pop into the chat if you've come across this term. Let me know what it means to you, or if you've never come across it, I would say apply the sniff test. What do those words make you think? What could be flipped learning? So I'll just give a minute there to see if anybody has any ideas. Leigh Bailey, students doing a learning task before the class. Yep. Or I guess maybe you pronounce your name Lee. I'm not 100% sure. To flip the class, that means to provide learners with the materials before the class, to do the task, listening or reading before the class. Okay, so generally most Yeah, the comments coming in are really on the money. That's it. Yeah, we set a task before learning. So, oh yeah, I like that one there. Flipped learning lesson prepared by students at home, kinda. Then activities in class versus normal class or home study. I like that idea. The home study. It's I often describe it as that the homework becomes the classwork, and the classwork becomes the homework. So just to drill down into it, so all of your definitions there are really on it, and just add a little bit more to it. So it's an educational approach where traditional in-class activities and homework assignments are reversed. In the English as a second language context, flipped learning involves students engaging with instructional content out of the class. You're probably even getting some ideas already, especially around teaching grammar and vocabulary. I would say it particularly lends itself to that. Pre-recorded video lectures or lessons or online resources are used for self-paced learning at home. Actually, the first iterations of flipped learning are, it's really come into vogue, I'd say, in the last decade or so, but the first iterations are much older than that. And yeah, people just assign readings before they come into class. So it doesn't necessarily have to be video. It could be, reading texts or audio. However, for the English as a second language context, I'm going to say, usually a video is going to be most beneficial for students, because even if you're taking a flipped approach and it's not about vocabulary or grammar per se, the student is still getting this kind of secondary input from you just by watching your mouth and your facial expressions, etc. All of that's helping them acquire language. And then, as been correctly pointed out there, the in-class time is dedicated to interactive and practical activities such as discussions, group projects, and language practice. And that's a big one there, language practice. So, for any of you who have taken any of the courses, such as one I mentioned, the CELTA or Trinity Cert TESOL, or maybe even up to Delta as well, or any kind of TEFL course or any kind of teacher training, you probably heard, a lot of talk around the idea of student-centeredness. So I'm going to say all of this, what I have on this slide, really boils down to this approach really amps up the student-centeredness of your classroom. Why? Because all of the teacher part, all of the input has been done at home. Maybe I shouldn't say all, but a large chunk of the teaching part, the presentation and clarification of your target language, for example, that's been done on a video. So by the time you come to the classroom, much less time is required for that, and much more time is dedicated to practice. One of the more well-known approaches to teaching language is, many of you have probably heard of the PPP method: present, practice, and produce. And that's often presented in a pyramid, with present in the smallest part at the top, practice, and produce. And it's presented in a pyramid like that to represent how the time should be allocated to those various parts of your lesson. So the idea is more time practicing the language is where the language acquisition is going to happen. So this flipped learning approach really lends itself. Okay, so required technology. I chose this image here because it's simple and I think pleasing, and I choose those adjectives because the answer to this question, the required technology, is both simple and pleasing. All you need is a computer, and I know, well, unless you're watching this conference on a tablet, which also is possible, or tablet, or a mobile phone. So any kind of computer, tablet, or cell phone is all you need, because all of those these days have inbuilt mics and cameras. The camera, I would say, is optional. Of course, I could be doing this Zoom call to you without my camera switched on. And the same goes for making flipped classroom learning materials. You don't always need to include your camera. And I would say there's actually, that becomes a skill of yours as a teacher, deciding when the camera is kind of a good idea and when it should be kind of like turned off for making videos for your students. The other part of what you need, so as I say, you need your computer. I would say, always, something as simple as a notebook. Personally, I like the notebook. I use a lot of technology as I'm sure all of us do in our lives. But I think with how pervasive technology is, and I'm here promoting you to use it in your classroom, I still think it's important for us, even just to practice the whole motor skills of writing. But I mean that seriously. But more than that, writing by hand, you don't have a backspace button, you don't have a delete button, so it just forces you to be a little bit more mindful about what you're planning to do. You're going to think about it a little bit more before you put pen to paper. So what I like to do before I go to make any kind of video for my students is I'll just write some bullet points. First of all, I want to start off by doing A, then B, then C. When I first started doing this, I would then use that kind of structure, and it's really just like a little lesson plan in many ways, isn't it? You're giving yourself a procedure of how you're going to go about creating your video. From there, I would use that to write a script for my first few videos. The reason being, actually the word just came out of my mouth there, M. There's going to be lots of M if you don't have a script of what you're going to talk about, because you're really just collecting your thoughts as you go. And that's fine in this kind of scenario where it's a presentation. But if it's a video, if it's something recorded, that especially the person will have the opportunity to rewind and watch again and again, I would say it's just best avoided. It just makes the material more engaging and more watchable if you have less M's. And having a script certainly helps to do that. It'll also help you to feel much calmer about making a video. So yeah, that's usually my process. I'll write a few bullet points, flesh that out into a script, and then get ready to make my video. Now at this stage, just like lesson planning, and I'm sure many of you are in this situation as well, once you get enough experience, your lesson plans don't need to be incredibly detailed. And the same goes for your script for flipped learning videos. At this stage, I've done so many of them that I just have the bullet points. That's enough. Also, I do some video editing, so I can go back and cut out any of the ums and ahs. But if you want to avoid the video editing part, just follow your script, do it enough times until you're feeling pretty comfortable with it, and then you can maybe just go to your bullet points. The other part of this, and as I mentioned, screen capture, screencasting, we can see these two things as synonymous. Sometimes screen capture is a wider term because it can be just for taking photos, images of your screen, which we're all, I'm sure, quite used to doing, especially with cell phones. So a tool that I would recommend for doing screen capture videos is one that's called Loom. And you can just Google Loom. I think it's loom.com. And the reason I recommend it is it doesn't require you to download anything. You can just install it. You don't need to install it at all. You can just click start a new video in your browser, and it'll just start right away. Now, you do need to sign in. If you have a Gmail account, makes that super easy because you can just sign in with your Gmail. But any of these websites, the sign up is pretty quick. You can also, if you just pay attention actually to my browser, you can also install it into your browser there. It's not necessary. I did it because it just means a quicker step. Let's say I'm on a website and I want to make a screen capture video, then I don't need to go to the Loom website and start it up there and then go back to my website. I can just start it up from this button that you can install into your Chrome browser for sure. I don't use Safari or Microsoft Edge, but I would presume that you can install it into those browsers as well. However, as I said, you don't need to install it. It's free to use, and it's a web-based application, so it's super easy. Like any of these tools that are free to use, there is limitations on the free version. However, I would say that those limitations are actually a good thing. So there's time limits on it, like how long your videos can be. But that's a good thing for us as language teachers, because it means that we don't meander and talk far too much. It means that We have to be succinct and think about our teacher talking time. And, I often say that teacher talking time, it's not a dirty word. Some people think, oh my goodness, the teacher talking time, I should become completely anonymous. Like, not at all. Your teacher talk is actually possibly the most valuable input that your students can get. However, it is still an art form, I would say. It's making your teacher talk clear, making it succinct, making it relevant, making it appropriately graded, not too high, not too low, right in the Goldilocks zone there, etc. So making these videos, again, that's an added benefit of it for us as teachers, that it just forces us or focuses a little bit more on our teacher talk in a kind of a safer environment, shall I say. I don't know if that's precisely the right word to put on it, but you can make your video, and if you need to do a redo, you can redo it as many times as possible before you send it out to the students. So you get multiple shots at it. Whereas in the classroom, you have to be a little bit more on it with your teacher talk. Okay, so to make these videos, that's really all you need. You need a computer, notebook, pencil. Maybe even these two are optional, but I strongly recommend them. And any kind of screen capture tool. Like there's a whole bunch of them out there. So, don't think that Loom is your only option. Like, you can go Googling. There's another one I used to use called Screener, another one called Screencast-O-Matic, although I think it's changed name recently. There's Camtasia, which is a bit more of a professional tool used in my profession as an instructional designer. So there's a whole bunch of them out there, but I thought I would recommend this one because it's a very accessible and great tool. Like, it produces fantastic results. So just because it's free doesn't mean that it's not very powerful. It certainly is. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm just going to really go through the materials for a sample lesson that I helped a client of mine, a person who is training to be a teacher, and I helped them prepare this lesson. So really, all I want you to pay attention as I'm describing the next few slides. I just want you to think about, how could I make a video out of this, send it to my students beforehand? What could I make a video of? And how could that be beneficial? So yeah, let's get into it. So I'm actually going to jump out of my presenter mode now. Okay, so I would start this lesson. So you can see my notes here. That's fine. So I'd start this lesson. This will be my lead in. I just have these 3 photos of quite very recognizable people. I'd ask this question, first of all, who are these people? Hopefully, I'll be able to get some answers from at least some of them. Obviously depending on your student's background, they may or may not know them, but I think these are pretty worldwide famous people. And, it's from a kind of a range of interests, from sporting to music and pop and all of that. So, for those who are not so into the football, they might like one of these singers, or vice versa. Okay. So yeah, I give my students a couple of minutes, just who are these people? And I'd also ask the question, what do they have in common? Are they well known? Just reveal. Okay, those are the people there. And I would ask this question, are they well known, to try and elicit the adjective famous? And then I'd also bring in these materials here, and I'd say, does anybody know what is this? Of course you do. It's Instagram. Do you think these people are popular on Instagram? So, of course they are. They're some of the biggest people on Instagram. And then I jump on to the next slide there, and I say, okay, according to Instagram, this would all be out of view here, my extra materials. According to Instagram, and I just ask students, how can I complete this question? Who is the of these 3 people? And then if I'm getting that, I'd say, look, 1, 2, 3, who is the Okay, and the idea there. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I got exactly what I was looking from there. Thank you, Meshfield. Again, I'm sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation of your name. But yeah, exactly. Most famous. And then I hand it over to my students so that they can fight it out amongst themselves. So that's kind of like part of the reason. Some people are going to be big Swifties, so they're going to, say Taylor Swift is the number 1. Some people are going to be big Cristiano Ronaldo fans. So you let them just have a little bit of conversation there. The idea is really to just get the students engaged with the context and provide a context to really allow my target language. And my target language for this lesson is comparatives. Oh, great. I pronounced it correctly. Fantastic. I'm always glad when I get it right first time. Thank you. But yeah, the idea here is to get your students engaged with the context and provide a context where the target language naturally will come up. So talking about famous people, who's the most famous, and getting them to kind of like express their opinions. Who do they think is the most famous is really going to just produce that target language more and more. So then I just give a little bit of feedback, and I said, okay, here's screenshots from their actual Instagram. So Taylor Swift, 273 million. The Biebs is 293 million, but the winner is Cristiano Ronaldo with 607 million. So yeah, the whole idea there is, as I say, engaging with the target language. I could ask some concept checking question. Is the most famous number 2, 3, or 1? So that's just getting the idea of superlatives. How do you know? The answer to the word most. Is most the superlative or the comparative? And more famous is the superlative more. Is that the superlative or the comparative? So I could say, well, Justin Bieber is more famous than Taylor Swift, but Cristiano Ronaldo is the most famous. And then I got some practice activities here. So yeah, students looking at comparatives and superlative forms of the adjectives, and then just having to not a practice activity, just a deeper clarification of different types of adjectives and their superlative and comparative forms. This could be, of course, set up as a guided discovery task. Students having to look at definitions and matching them up to examples. And I try with my context to make my example similar to the one that appears in the materials. And I leave in some images in here to have the students be able to refer to those. Actually, in the first version of these materials, I was using Justin Bieber and Wayne Rooney, but I changed them to Taylor Swift and Cristiano Ronaldo. So I'd have those images here just again so students can refer to the context. It's always important to keep contextualizing your lesson or your target language, I should say, and your lesson overall at every point. After all, we're not linguistics lecturers, we are language teachers, and of course the context is extremely important to creating a communicative environment for your students to practice the language. So just a little bit more with digging into the meaning of the target language, and then finally following up with some practice activities, a controlled practice and a freer practice activity. So back to the presenter view. You didn't see my answers there too quickly. If you would like to just throw some ideas into the chat there. As I was presenting my materials for that lesson, what ideas occurred to you how we could convert any of that into videos? So if you have any ideas, please drop them into the chat. Pronunciation, absolutely. That's a great one, in fact. Often with pronunciation in the classroom, we do this choral and then individual pronunciation. So, the student has the opportunity to kind of hear it and try it out in the, the whole class environment before having the spotlight put on them. However, by you pronouncing the target language, focusing on word stress or sounds, the student has the opportunity, again, to watch you, like watching the shape of the mouth. It's very important, and to listen to it and try it again and again. You could even encourage students to take the next step and to try and use voice dictation in their cell phone to see if they can, say the target language into, the notes on their phone. A communicative task like dialogues to model the language. So I'm glad that you brought that one up, Kira. I would actually just say this The video itself is probably not going to be communicative in the strict sense, from the communicative approach. Insofar as the communicative approach, when it comes to teaching language, is based on what's called the information gap. So you have a gap in your information that I need to provide, and I have a gap in my information that you need to provide, and that just creates a need for us to communicate. However, I will zero in on the other word you used there, to modeling the language. So for sure, especially if I had a friend here with me, I could model using the target language. So again, students can be exposed to it and maybe use that for some pronunciation, but it's not going to be communicative from their point of view because they're actually not responding meaningfully to something that they've has been said to them. Michelle, form of comparatives, superlatives, clarification. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so very much so. The form is a big one. Like, so I can really, zero in on the form here a lot. I can say, okay, I can set up this activity. Here we have adjectives, comparatives, superlatives, and here we have some rules. I want you to pause the video now and think about how can you match these rules to these examples of adjectives, comparatives, and superlatives. Let's do the first one as an example. So an adjective with 2 syllables or more will use most or more, more or most plus the adjective, and we can see there number 4. Okay, so pause the video now and go through the rest of those. So absolutely a focus on form of whatever the target language is. Of course, in this example that I'm giving you, it's, yes, comparatives and superlatives. But as I said, this approach, this flipped learning, in my own opinion, it lends itself most well to language systems classes. And when I say language systems, I mean vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and then functional language. However, I have used it effectively as well for some skills lessons, for establishing some context for a reading lesson, getting students to just providing them with a little video for the background of a reading that we're going to do the next day so that they have something to talk about for the lead into that lesson, I guess you could say. Oksana says, using a listening or reading text in your video to contextualize the target language and guided discovery tasks, asking them to pause the video and completing them and displaying the answers. Okay, so you were preempting there's exactly what I was saying. So yes, absolutely, Oksana. So on both sides of it there, I'll just go back because I really like what you said there about contextualizing the target language. So that was the whole point here of having these super famous people. Contextualizing the language isn't just any old context. The measure for a well-chosen context is, can the language pretty easily and naturally occur in that context? And the context that I've set up here, 3 incredibly famous people. So there's a high likelihood that everyone will know who they are, whether they're into those people or not, they'll at least have heard of them. And then they can use that as a basis to decide who they believe is the most famous person. So yeah, context is really, really important. And yeah, sorry, just going back, last thing you said, displaying the answers. I could set up my materials here with the rest of the answers completed and just have a box over these. And once they unpause the video, just remove the boxes so that the answers become revealed. Let me see, videos help increase students' attention. Yeah, I think I would just say, we do live in a time where we're quite, if I can say it like this, saturated by content. We live in the time of YouTube and Instagram and all of that, and we're constantly consuming content. So while, of course, I'm promoting this and in the context of, if you set this as homework and students have to watch this video, they will usually do it. However, I would just give a little warning that, don't rely on it 100%. You still need to start your next lesson by asking some of your concept checking questions. For example, you see here, like in my notes, I had my concept checking questions down here, just to still make sure in the lesson the next day that, I can ask these questions and make sure that if the students have watched the video, that they have indeed understood the meaning and the form, and maybe even practice some of the pronunciation of the target language. So that's, the more you use this approach, the more that your students will get used to it and certainly become quite engaged by it. However, just make sure to do your teacher part as well and make sure that they're adequately concept checked. And okay, so yeah, so we've mentioned particularly focused on presenting and clarifying target language. You could just like focus on a particular part, so it doesn't always have to be done up like a presentation like this, the way I've done it. It could be just a straight up recording of yourself, and again, the cell phone would be perfect for that. Zone in just one more time on one of your great answers there about focusing on pronunciation, like just making a selfie video and sending that out to your students to get them to practice pronunciation of target language. I've used that to great effect. Students love it, and there's plenty of ways of sharing that content with them. You don't need to share your personal telephone number with them. You can use a Dropbox or Google Drive, and there's plenty of other materials. In fact, I go into quite a bit of that, how to set up and manage virtual classrooms in my online consultancy for teachers and those preparing for exams online. As I mentioned, the flipped approach is great for lead-ins as well. You can just get, you can show students some photos, talk about it, and then, set up your lead-in in the following day's class and say, provide them with some information around the background of whatever the topic is. Again, let's say it's famous people. Maybe you might give a little bio of some famous people, and then give them some photos in the classroom and talk about which is your favorite. And they'll have a little bit more to say because they've been exposed to these bios that you've given them. But flipping the flipped classroom, if I can, you can also use this approach or use screen capture videos for homework feedback. So instead of, correcting things or writing out, give them written feedback. Like if you consider my slide here, imagine your slide was the student's homework, or even if the student has given you homework on a piece of paper, take a photograph of it and then make a screen capture video with you doing a voiceover of your feedback. Again, one of the comments there was about how this could be particularly well used for exam class preparation. I've used that approach for giving feedback for people preparing for the Cambridge Advanced and Proficiency, like just to give oral feedback in a video to their written work, and students respond really well. Edpuzzle, I haven't come across that one myself, Nermeen, but no doubt there's just a multitude of great tools out there that certainly we can use for achieving these goals. Like I said before, the one piece of software that I recommended there, Loom, fully recognized. There's a million others out there. It's just one that I've used. I know it works well, etc. Oh, great! More great suggestions coming in there. Cami, great ones there for you guys to Google. And then again, I can flip the flip classroom again in another way. I can now assign speaking or pronunciation as homework for students. So I can ask students to record video messages and send those in as homework. Or there are platforms when you can, set up a slide and students have to leave video messages around talking points. Again, that's very relevant to students' reality. If any of you use WhatsApp or Messenger, or any of those things, we send voice messages and video messages. So it's just really good practice for that. And then, of course, you as a teacher can feedback on that. Another tool that I like using for that is SoundCloud. SoundCloud is particularly used by musicians, but what's nice about SoundCloud is along the audio file, you can pause it and leave a comment at particular points in the audio file. And yeah, it's great for providing feedback in that way. So, really the sky's the limit with what you can do. All of you, provided quite a few great ideas here in addition to the ones that I've prepared there. And I certainly wouldn't say that, there's any kind of, that this is an exhaustive list that I've come up with for you. the things that I'm suggesting to you are really things that I've done myself over the years, and I've found that they work really well, and I've got quite good engagement from my students from them. So another thing that I mentioned from the outset that we would talk about is this idea of evergreen materials. So, the great thing about spending time on making these materials is that when they're often reusable. And so what I mean is, just spend 20, 30 minutes, make this kind of material, and saving yourself hours of preparation in the future. For example, you can make a video of yourself on, presenting the target language, like in my famous people lesson, or video yourself doing the pronunciation. Or what I do sometimes as well for myself, for my own planning, I'll make a little screen capture video for myself, so just to help me remember what I should talk about in each slide, or how to do the lesson. This is also great as well if you're working in a school, if you've come up with some materials and there's a culture of sharing materials in your school. And so you can say, yeah, here's my lesson plan, this is what I plan to do, yada, yada, yada. This is something that this particular group of students need more focus on. Yeah, so it's really good for collaborating with other teachers and collaborating with future you. I still refer to some, with teacher training, there's some topics that I won't train on in every course that I train. So I leave a little video note to myself for the future when I do come back to that topic, so that I stay fresh on it. Okay, so, and this is similar to our previous question, but there is a kind of nuance difference. So if we take this approach to providing materials before the lesson so the students are ready, or we take this approach to using video for giving feedback, how could it change what happens in the classroom? Okay, so yeah, please drop any ideas that occur to you in the chat there. Narmeen is straight in with one. Oh, so excuse me, Narmeen is straight in with one. It saves time in class when students already know what we're going to teach. Absolutely, in terms of saving time and student, but I would just, now you might say I'm nitpicking a little bit, and I'm sure this is what you mean, but I would just, I guess, expand on what you're saying there a little bit. I'd say it leaves more time open, and I'm sure that's what you meant. It leaves more time open for students practicing with the target language. I would say as well that, just to reiterate a point that I made already, that when you say when students already know what you're going to teach, I wouldn't say that students already no, because again, that's the point of concept checking questions, isn't it? We ask those questions. Does it mean this or that? Is it that or the other? We ask those questions for students to confirm that they've understood things. We can't let the flipped classroom or these videos entirely replace us as teachers. Like our role is still very important. We still need to come in and confirm. And then when they get something wrong, of course, we need to make interventions there. So there still is some clarification to be done in the classroom. But yeah, students will come to the class knowing a lot more. So therefore, their questions are going to be much more needs-based, rather than them kind of grappling with what you're trying to present to them in the lesson itself. It increases student autonomy. That's a really nice one, Isabel. Absolutely. And I think students come into the classroom more confident, more ready to practice the target language with more ideas. So their brains are a little bit more warmed up, as it were. Meshtild, much more time for interactive activities and communication in class. Absolutely, and that's the name of the game, isn't it? We're always looking for opportunities to provide communicative practice for our students. And, for us as teachers, especially if we're under any kind of time crunch, it really reduces the sense of pressure. Oh my goodness, I need to get through this, and this, and we don't rush our students so much, which again helps a lot with learning process, with students' ability to engage with your learning materials. So I like this what you said there, Marie, about the pace could be different, slow students and fast ones. Now, if you'd like to down below, just expand on what you mean by that. And I'm going to offer how I interpret that and something that I do there, where you have sometimes one student will be stronger, another one will be weaker, or maybe one student might be more extrovert, another student might be less so. So the flipped classroom will kind of like even the playing field there. The quieter student or the less extroverted or the not so strong student still has their opportunity to really dig into the materials without, running the risk of missing something if the lesson moves on faster. Then when it comes to the actual lesson, you as a teacher, of course, are keeping an eye on that. Who are the stronger students? Who are the more kind of dominating students? And, you'll adjust your classroom management appropriately, right? You might maybe elect a speaker from a group so that even if there's, people who are kind of like taking over, the person who's the speaker might be the person who needs a little bit more speaking time. So I really like that one, that about the pace being a little different there. And the similar point there from Dr. Nermin, motivating shy students to participate. Absolutely, and even those students who are a little bit kind of like tentative, oh my goodness, I don't know, and I don't want anybody to ask me anything. Now they're coming to the classroom maybe with a little bit more confidence and, ready to engage a little more. Students are allowed to prepare at their own pace and become more autonomous. So that's a really nice one as well. Preparing at your own pace. All of us. I often say I've got a video on my YouTube channel about how to get an A in your Celtic course. And I will always say, even though I became a Celtic trainer and I did achieve that, I didn't get an A in my own course. But I'd say about 6 months after I finished my Celta, I was at that level. So I just needed a bit more time. Whereas I had a colleague on my course who, just nailed it and got their A, and I've worked with plenty of trainees over the years who do, but like some of us just go at different paces. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to get there. Of course, we're going to get there. We just need a little bit more time. And that's just part of the human experience, isn't it? And so I really like that point where you can learn at your own pace, and that helps to grow the autonomy as well. Absolutely. And Marie, yeah, exactly. They can work work on their own at home. So yeah, just more of this active learning, I guess you could say. More interaction in the classroom. Absolutely. Again, those students showing up with a more solid basis around context and your target language means that, they're probably going to be more enthusiastic. You're going to get more of these students, shouting out the answers and, just really engaged with your various activities throughout the lesson. It's kind of preparation. Absolutely. And I would say on both sides, like for you as a teacher and for the students, it's kind of like, yeah, letting the students kind of like get a backstage look at you doing the lesson planning, but actually turning that into an activity for the learners. So you're kind of getting like more bang for your buck, as they say here in North America. You're getting more value for your effort, because it is absolutely, it's preparing you to teach the materials by preparing these flipped materials, these videos. These students become more responsible for learning. That's a great one. They work from home and can prepare, taking into account their own pace. Yeah, when you become more, when it's, when you can channel your intrinsic motivation, that's a big win when you can get there. If students feel responsible for their own learning, if they're doing it for their own personal reasons, then the success is going to be much more. That's really fantastic, everyone. Thank you so much for such really great engagement, really great suggestions there. Okay, so just to kind of wrap up, just a couple more ideas that I prepared. So it enhances ESL students' comprehension as they can revisit materials, as we've mentioned quite a lot, at their own pace. So, just the rewind button or the scrubbing forward and back. So, sometimes they just miss what you said in the classroom, and like that could be pretty crucial. So having a rewind button there helps a lot. And we've talked about a version of this, active learning, student engagement, and their language skills improve as a result. So, the biggest boon for me is that now, we have the opportunity to monitor much more and make those on-the-spot interventions, much more personalized support during in class sessions and addressing those individual needs. And this is one that all of you kind of came up with a lot, this independent or autonomous learning. It's really crucial for language acquisition. What happens in the classroom is helpful, but it's not, you need to do much more outside the classroom to really acquire the language. And of course, it can be adapted for a bunch of different levels. And, we are aware of that as teachers. We need greater language. And yeah, inclusive classrooms, absolutely. Inclusion for me certainly means seeing which of your students are involved, engaged, and making sure that you're not just flying with the fastest, that you're making sure to be able to make those interventions with the students who really need your time. And that's a great one, Kara. Okay, so I said it would be time for a Q&A, and we'll have about a minute if anybody would like to ask any questions. And you can put those, I give a minute or so for you to put some in the chat if you have any questions. And just while any of you are doing that, if you'd like to, I'll just go through, as I mentioned, how you can contact me if you're interested in a consultation for improving as a teacher, or doing a teacher training course, or an exam preparation. Of course, you can just reach out to me by email. I'll just jump onto my website. Alternatively, you can just go to my website, and I will drop a link in chat. There's my website. I will go back to the previous slide in 1 second, Marie. So you can use my website and click on this button, book an appointment, or there's book appointment up here. There's all sorts of places you can book an appointment, and you'll find a space there where it's a free 30-minute consultation with me. If you would like to get involved there, you can find out more information about me there. Let me see as well. And as I mentioned, I'm on all the usual social media. So on Twitter, honestly, I'm not very active on Twitter. I'll post links to my videos on YouTube and stuff there. Facebook, a little bit more active there on my Facebook page. So that's just Integrated Skills. And the same on Instagram. It's Integrated Skills ESL. And so, yeah, go back to the previous slide, which was my YouTube channel. And so I'm going to share a link here and I'll just full disclosure about this link that I'm sharing. Will bring you to my YouTube channel, but it's a subscribe link. So you can subscribe to my channel. I've been on a little bit of a hiatus for the last few months. I've had just a lot going on here in Canada. But I'm going to be dropping a lot more videos there for teachers. You can actually just see down here on the faded out part, there's actually an interview with myself and Shannon, which you can check out. Shannon very kindly came on my channel and provided really great content. So, I've got a lot of really nice feedback about that video. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I know I've gone a couple of minutes over time there. 1 minute. And so, yeah, thank you so much for your participation. I really loved all of your comments. And yeah, thank you, Shannon, for hosting this event. I'm wishing all of you teachers and aspiring teachers every success in the future with your teaching. Thank you so much.
Hello. All right. Thank you, Fergus. That was fantastic. I was just hunting for your web link so I could put it directly into the chat.
All right.
I don't know if you saw the questions in the Q&A or the questions in the chat there. I don't know if you can access the Q&A as a presenter. We've got just a couple there.
Oh, sorry. I didn't have the Q&A open, but there are two. Oh, yes, I have them. So
awesome. I'll let you get to those.
Yeah, Kira asks, can we say that flipped learning, extended time of teaching, starting from home, turning it into class, and then turning it back home? I really like that interpretation of it. I guess you could say that. And I just take the angle that it takes the pressure off the in-class teach section, shall we call it. If you're teaching, let's say you have an hour lesson, right? You probably want no more than 10, 15 minutes, kind of max, for your presentation and your clarification of your target language. Whereas if you make a 10-minute video, that will allow the students to spend a little bit more time with your input, which might answer some of the questions which they inevitably ask in the classroom, which when it's in the classroom, that pushes that 10, 15 minutes out a little bit further into your practice time, right? So yeah, it does extend the teaching time. And then, as I mentioned, it's really important when it comes to your lesson, after the students have watched this video, that you still allocate some time for clarifying the target language, as I mentioned, with concept checking questions or however you do it, with images, timelines, maybe some drilling of pronunciation. Maybe you still want to hear the students. You've anticipated that they're going to have some issues with a certain aspect of pronunciation, and you still want to spend a little bit of time in the classroom on that. So yeah, I really think that's a great question, because it really does, I guess, bring to the top what is the value of this flipped learning. That, yeah, students get much more value from your input. And then again, their questions are really just based on the parts that weren't maybe entirely clear to them from the video, or your concept checking questions can highlight to you where you might still need to spend a little bit more time. And then what I found is the net effect of that is the students are much more successful in control practice. So you can say, okay, they've got their accuracy down. So then they can spend much more time on freer practice, which again allows you as a teacher to, monitor them, take some notes, and do like a delayed correction. So your correction, becomes focused on their very specific needs. You allow them to develop fluency, which fluency with accuracy is really the name of the game, isn't it? So yeah, there's many benefits towards that, getting a bit more teaching time, I guess, for your students. Okay, so let me see. Teacher Danish. I like that handle. I actually worked with a Danish teacher just at the beginning of this year, and I had a director of studies in the school that I worked at. Actually, a mentor of mine, the person who trained me to be a teacher trainer in Brazil many moons ago, was also a Danish guy. Really, really great friend of mine. Lovely people. So I have a lot of time for the Danes. What are some situations where the flipped classroom method is not as effective as the traditional classroom? So answer live now. I would say straight off the bat, it's not effective if it's all you do. There's this idea called principled eclecticism, right? You gotta, well, let's think about those words. Principled, you've got a good reason for it. Eclecticism, it's eclectic. There's variety. It's not always just the same thing. So, for as long as I've been a teacher, principled eclecticism has been important, because you want to keep your students engaged. You want to keep them interested. So if you use the flipped approach for every single lesson, your students might go, oh, this again, or they might become autopilot, or they might realize, oh, that person didn't watch the video and they were still finding the lesson, so I'm not going to watch these videos. But if it's done, personally, I generally reserve it for vocab and grammar, and maybe every second one. I know that sounds a little arbitrary. I might, where I'm going to take that kind of PPP approach, I would do it there. If I was planning to do a test, teach, test lesson, because I feel that students have been exposed to this target language before, and I want to see where they're at so that I can make my interventions to the class, I might not use it then. So yeah, those are just some thoughts. I would, take this principal eclectic approach. Don't use it all the time, because then students will kind of get on autopilot with it. And I would use it primarily for, as I say, and those systems lessons. But from time to time, get creative. Think about how you could do your lead-in, or maybe your pre-teach of your vocab for your skills lessons, especially receptive skills. But yeah, just don't go into the overkill, I guess. It would be my overarching answer to that one. Okay, fantastic.
Great. All right. Super helpful. And then I think there was one more question. Maybe you answered it in the chat and I missed it, but Oksana was asking if you've ever flipped a CELTA course. I was curious about that too.
Really sorry that I missed that question. Oh, because that's a great question. In fact, that's the whole genesis of the reason why I have a YouTube channel, and because I decided to do some of my input sessions for the CELTA, put them up on YouTube, assign them to my trainees, and then turn my input sessions more into workshops and demo teaching and all that. So yes, I absolutely have. And again, I often use it again with my private clients as well, or particularly with the exam prep students that I teach online as well. I'll assign them a video of a language point, some idioms or something like that. And so they're coming prepared with good questions for the lesson. But yeah, and it worked really well in Celta.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I love that, and it's interesting because I think a lot of us Celta trainers felt that way, where it was so much to pack into, like, the 90-minute input session that it was impossible not to feel like, "Okay, there's gotta be a way I can, like, prepare something for them in advance, like, give them a video, something where they
yeah,
can show up and not be so overloaded in person."
I, I
Yeah.
I used to do it as well, not just for input sessions, but then I started to do it as well for the guided lesson planning section. So when I was giving a teaching notes, so for anybody just who hasn't done Salta, there's a component called teaching practice. So you actually have to teach students, and kind of a couple of days before you're going to teach this lesson that you're assessed on, your tutor, such as Shannon or myself, would sit down with you for a pretty high octane 10 or 15 minutes to say, okay,
Yeah.
this, and you're going to teach bum 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 bum, and you should remember this and that and the other. And trainees are frantically writing down notes. But yeah, instead of doing that, I would just do the whole assigning teaching points as a video, and then the guided lesson planning section was more of a Q&A. Okay, so you watch your video, you know what you're teaching, you know where your
Exactly.
materials are, and then it's really okay, how can you take advantage of me as your tutor to kind of like answer any doubts that you had, like around those materials or ideas you had for interactions or time allocations or whatever it may be. And again, I found that, yeah, really, really beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually so for those of you who don't know who are here, that so Fergus and I are both Delta trainers, as you could probably tell now from this conversation. And we've had a lot of conversations about the Celta amongst the two of us. But yeah, the online English teacher course that I run, it's basically entirely flipped classroom, and a lot of it came from sort of my frustrations with some of those things on Celta. Like I'm not knocking Celta. Celta is an amazing program. But it is so much packed into such a short amount of time that when I designed Online English Teacher, I the whole thing is flipped classroom. And the thing that I think blew my mind the most as a trainer was the difference in our guided lesson planning time. Where now, by the time, like on the Online English Teacher course, when the teachers do the practicum, by the time they come to me for our actual guided planning session, they have the entire lesson prepared and they just have questions about it because they've
Yeah.
watched all the videos, right? Like they've already had this step by step kind of tutorial of how to plan the lesson. They come to, here's my PowerPoint, here's what I want to ask you, here's what I want to ask you, here's what I want to ask you, when we just talk through those things. Yeah, such a better way to use that 15 minutes.
Oh, totally, totally. It's just so much more fruitful, you know. Oh my goodness, what I'm going to miss something. No, they're coming. Okay, I know what's going on here. Just fix this. Help me with that. Help me with the other. So, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, flipped classroom has been a game changer for us as trainers as well, I think.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And Danish, I think, or teacher Danish, I think the blended salsa does have sort of that kind of format. It's just not quite there yet. I think they're still probably improving the Moodle. I think they have improved the Moodle probably since the last time I looked at it, but I think it's getting there for sure.
And so again, just if there's anybody like here who has probably heard that word Moodle, but they don't really know what it is, it's a learning management system. So it's or an LMS, you might hear it's learning management system. So it's just a way of, yeah, organizing materials. And I just throw this out there, and it's another thing that I work with clients and trainees and students on. Is just how to make a learning management system for yourself, which is a little bit less involved because Moodle is, it's used by universities, and it's
Yeah.
used, so it would be, I would say it would be a lot to take on for just yourself.
Yes.
Even though it's open source, it's free for everybody to use. So there's more accessible tools out there. One which I'd recommend is Google Classroom. I use it quite a bit, and those who I've trained to use that find it really, really helpful. But yeah, if you're doing an online self, it'll be something like Moodle, Blackboard as well. But yeah,
Yeah, I think they used to use Blackboard. like the early, or I was one of the first, at least at the company I worked for, I was one of the first blended Celta trainers. And like
Yeah.
way back, we used Blackboard, and I think Blackboard has also since undergone a makeover, but it was a little rough in those early days.
Yeah, I've certainly been there. I was more exposed to Moodle myself, and on one hand, you think, "Oh, this is great! Like, look at all of what it can do for being a free open source tool." But sometimes the user interface or just the
Yeah.
user experience is, yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
But
More
yeah,
than you need is not always a good thing.
yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I don't want to keep you, but thank you for staying a little bit later to answer questions and to chat with me. And Fergus, thank you again for joining, for sharing this information with us. I think we have your website now and your YouTube channel in the chat. So if anybody wants to follow, feel free. So you can keep in touch. And I hope, yeah, we've already talked about maybe doing some more collaboration in the future. So I don't think this is the last you'll see of Fergus at TEFL Horizons.
Absolutely. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to connecting again, Shannon, and great to see you as always. And thank you everybody for attending. It was a real pleasure to spend the last hour and a bit with you. Okay, so I hope that you found that video helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have already tried out flipped learning, what success you may have had with it. And please do, as I mentioned, check out my website for more help with your teaching, and consider reaching out to me via my website if you would like to speak more about a training course you're on, or maybe an exam that you're preparing for, or just general help with your teaching. Okay, that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video.